Okay, everybody, welcome back. This is part 2 of my blind sampling sessions. If you haven't watched part 1, there is an explanation in the description of this video, plus a link to that part 1 video. So please read that and you'll know what I'm doing here in this video. I'm going to get straight into my first impression descriptions of these scents. Now, as I'm filming this right now, I'll read my notes and my impressions of each of those scents, but right now I actually still don't know what the fragrances are, and I'll add them in. Once I find out, I'll add them in editing this video, obviously, because I'll reveal them after each description. Let's get started. So like the other video, I'm going to start with my lowest ranked to my highest ranked. So this one was numbered number 12, and my notes here were that it smells like some kind of floral that I had never had my nose on before. Like I couldn't, you know, just generally it was a floral kind of profile, but I would have no idea what type of floral that was, what combination it was, and I just did not like this one at all. In fact, it actually kind of nauseated me a little bit, and I got what I can only describe as some kind of pink flower, but it had been microwaved and melted. So there's definitely a plasticky kind of thing, and I almost like a melted plastic doll's head. And I really didn't like this, and it didn't get any better. In fact, it was pretty much a scrubber, and quite possibly the worst perfume I have probably put my nose on so far, period. I rated this a 1 out of 10, just because the 1 was just because it existed. Okay, so next up was perfume number 7. I got a lovely kind of fizzy orange / mandarin opening, but it didn't smell very natural to me. So it wasn't, you know, there was no mouth watering going on here. It just kind of smelled kind of chemically orange. Then later I got a little bit what smelled more like bergamot to me. And orange blossom maybe, but I thought it was okay as long as you like this type of citrus style cologne, but mainly it remained later on more of a neroli scent, and it didn't change a lot, but I can still I could still detect it on my skin quite well after a few hours, and my rating for this one was a 7. Okay, so next up was perfume number 15. Sweet, powdery floral, like a pink floral, you know, just my impression in the opening, with kind of like a little bit of berry fruitiness in it. It's pleasant, but it smelled a little bit mainstream, and it projected well when I first sprayed this on. As it dried down, it gets into this kind of clean musk territory, some kind of sweeter resins, and then I could detect a spice I think was probably cardamom, and it sort of took over from that opening, and I liked it a little bit more as it dried down. I just kind of feel that there is a lot of this kind of scent profile out on the market, so it wasn't anything that was blowing me away. It just teetered on a little bit too sweet and juvenile for me to actually want to wear something like this. Then I think what I was getting mainly was in the base cardamom, vanilla, and maybe some violet powderiness as well. It didn't last very long on my skin, but I still rate this a 7. So the worst rating I gave was that first fragrance, but then everything else in this group was kind of, I've given it a 7 and up. Okay, so next up was perfume number 17. This one here was a little bit interesting. It was a kind of, for me, a slightly dirty, leathery oud opening. It smelled quite natural to me, didn't smell very synthetic at all. Then there was like this slightly burnt rubber element. And it's something that I detect in quite a few of these oud-based fragrances as well. It got a little bit smoky, a little bit animalic is the word I use to describe it. And I can see that a lot of people are into these type of scents. It's not really my thing at the moment. I imagine I have not smelled T-Rex by zoologists, but I have smelled Hyde by Hiram Green once. It's that kind of ballpark, that kind of smoky, earthy, animalic kind of leather. Like I said, I've smelled a few too many that are like this, and this one seemed a little bit unbalanced and not as well blended as other things I've smelled. I think that this would probably be a niche fragrance. I'd be surprised if a designer put something out like this. It smells relatively natural, and I rated it a 7. Okay, so perfume number 10 was an interesting one for me. I quite enjoyed this, apart from the fact that it did remind me of a genre of fragrance, basically. It was very reminiscent to me of things like Roche's Femme, which I have already. Mitsuko, it's you know, there's fruitiness in the opening, maybe combination of florals, including jasmine, maybe some ylang ylang spices. I could smell cumin quite clearly in this fragrance, and as it dried down, it really just reminded me of that style of classic chypre. It really did actually, without doing a side-by-side comparison, I couldn't help but think of Roche's Femme in this one here. So yeah, it was nice, but it's something that reminded me of things that I've smelled before. I did enjoy it though, so I rated this a 7.5. Okay, next up was perfume number 16, and my notes are that it opened up with a very quite lipsticky iris note. There's probably also some kind of very refined suede / leather beneath it. The obvious comparison to me was something like Dior Homme, although I'm very certain that it's not Dior Homme, but that kind of ballpark. This one feels like it has other florals in its heart, maybe some jasmine and orange blossom. And for an iris scent, it's quite lovely, given that I'm not big into iris at the moment. But I already feel like it's that it kind of got very soft and close to the skin pretty quickly. There wasn't much change with this one, and although it was pleasant, I found it just a little bit boring. I felt like there was some vanilla in the base that sweetened it up. And my guesses or my thoughts were that I would think that this is probably a designer in the realm of the Prada L'Homme line. Although I'm not very familiar with that line. I could detect like an amber in the base. You know, it's not a hard prediction to make. It ended up lasting quite well, although be it a soft fragrance, and I did enjoy it deep into the dry down with that amber base. So I rated this one 7.5. Okay, so number 19 is next up. So I got a very minty opening, almost more like a spearmint to me. Whether that's correct or not, I'm not sure, but it just reminded me of spearmint flavored gum rather than peppermint flavored gum. Now, normally I don't like mint in general, but this is actually, this I noted was unusually pleasant and quite strong. There are other kind of green or floral notes supporting it, so it feels more like a perfume rather than the smell of mint, if that makes any sense. I actually really liked this. It was very refreshing, and I liked the fact that it had almost some cool and warm elements at the same time. And it felt like there were other herbs in play here in the composition of this fragrance. And I like that it is more like a minty floral and with a little bit of that bubblegum sweetness, but not too much. There was also almost like this kind of melon-like note in the background that kind of lent it some kind of salty aquatic vibe. If anyone is familiar with Creed Millésime Imperial, that is kind of what it reminded me of, but predominantly it was a mint fragrance. I rated it a 7.5, but I feel like this is the type of thing, the more I wear, I could like even more or rate even higher. That for me is a very good rating, given that this is a mint dominant fragrance. I feel like this is a niche perfume. I just don't expect to smell things like this in the designer realm. And I would definitely wear this kind of thing in the summer if it was a reasonable, affordable price. Okay, so we're getting into the top 3 of this particular grouping of 10, and these 3 I rated all the same mark. They were 8 out of 10, so there's no clear winner for me, but these were my 3 favorites. So number 8, perfume number 8 was, I got a very good, I actually noted, ooh, it smelled like a lovely amber with an indolic white floral, heavy on the benzoin. It got kind of powdery, slightly animalic. I described it as a dense floral amber with some nice sweetness coming from resins. There's probably some iris there adding to the depth of it. It is what I imagine an old style women's powder room from the 50s would kind of smell like. That's the imagery that came into my head. It was sumptuous, and I thought it was actually pretty sexy scent. It's either, I kind of feel like it was either a niche fragrance or something like a vintage that I would expect to smell in a vintage guerlain. Which one? I don't know. There was a furriness, like as in animal fur about it, and not so much like animalic as in stinky, skanky, just this kind of warm aliveness of it. That's such a bad description. After a while, it got a little bit powdery, more vanillic than the florals, which I guess kind of you would expect as different elements dried down. I really liked this one, but I think this is a type of thing I would much prefer to be smelling on someone else. So this was a 8 out of 10 for me. Okay, so next up was the perfume number 9, and immediately lovely, gorgeous grapefruit. It was so juicy, but it wasn't too tart. It still made my mouth water, but it was so addictive from the get-go. And to me, it felt like such a realistic depiction of the whole fruit. I got the juice, the zest, and even the fleshy pith of the grapefruit. It was such a 3D citrus to me. I liked also how it kind of darkens up a little bit once you get away from the opening. And then I got more of a bergamot citrus instead of the grapefruit. And even something that was kind of almost berry-like, that just gave it that extra depth and darkness. So I actually tried this in cold weather, but I can only imagine how lovely this would be in the summer. I could tell it wasn't something that would stick around for long, but again, one wearing impressions. So I would love to test this more when the weather warms up. I gave this an 8 because it was quite literally the best grapefruit-based fragrance I have ever smelled. And finally, we have perfume number 20. I immediately liked the opening, like it was a bright, fizzy, green, citrusy, kind of floral almost, and maybe it could be something like geranium I was smelling. It smells like a classic perfume, like I envisage one of the classic Chanels. I liked this. It was a really nice, what I feel like perfect spring perfume. I suspect it will stay fairly linear, but then what I can smell later is what I think is galbanum. There is a greenness with some maybe jasmine, some white floral there to underpin it. And then it dries down to like a piney / mossy base, like a classic kind of green woody base. And in some strange way, that base reminded me of Caron's Yataghan. And I kept sniffing my arm and really enjoying this one. And this one I rated an 8 as well. Yeah, so you saw what each of those fragrances were. I've added them in now that I've edited this video, and I'm going to post a little bit of a epilogue at the end of this. So thanks for watching, and I hope you found that interesting. See you guys.